you think is more likely? That the natural world evolved, a solar system, and life emerged on the planet and went through a long series of evolution to get complex animals, and one of those animals happened to develop consciousness, and part of that consciousness allowed them to develop tribes, and part of developing tribes was about developing rituals so you could identify other members of that tribe, and you could win over other tribes that had different rituals, and came up with explanations for natural phenomena that they didn't have the scientific information for to answer themselves, so they came up with anthropological ideas like that there is a God looking over us and cares about us? Or do you think there's a God, or do you think it's more likely that there's a God who set the world in motion just so human beings, the species human beings, could evolve, and then at this one point in the Middle East impregnated a young woman without having sex with her so that she had a baby? And this was before the printing press or even recorded devices. He could go out and say a few things about love and then get killed as a terrorist, as a religious terrorist. And then 70 years later, some people wrote some things about him. And rituals and tribes grew up around this idea. What do you think is more likely? To me, it's so obvious that it's much more likely that we evolved as a species with a certain psychology that comes up with stories, that creates tribes and rituals, that creates family relationships, and that we came up for many, many years with ideas about how the world worked by answering it with anthropological fairy tales. And now we are in an information age where we can share scientific information with each other. We've developed the scientific method, which is very important. And we can share information, and we have found that it's much more likely that there isn't a God. And that's what came upon me about 10 or 12 years ago, and it changed my life. And I have really never looked back. And frankly, I still just find it really hard to believe that anyone believes in a God at all. Like, I have never even wavered on it. I try to see their point of view. Now, this is something I really do understand. I totally understand why people would want to be part of a religion. That makes a lot of sense to me. I personally was raised Catholic, and I loved it. I had a really good experience. You know, there were crazy things, but I just thought those were entertaining as well. I looked at the church in a very loving way. My experience going to Catholic schools was good. I felt like I got a pretty good education. I didn't have any traumatic experiences. I was proud to be Catholic. I liked the rituals. I loved Bach. They say Bach is probably responsible for 50% of the Catholics that are in existence right now because the music's so fantastic. Totally loved it. It was totally my culture, and I was Irish on both sides of my family, and being Catholic and being Irish was a huge, huge part of our identity. And I loved it. And I never had a negative view of God, so I did not have a traumatic experience that caused me to be an atheist. My God was really like this really loving uncle. He just listened to me, and he so wanted me to win. And nothing terrible happened that I said, why should this happen? I really always thought that the bad things that happened, for example, I had a brother who had cancer who died. You know, it was part of this big plan that I didn't understand. When it came to proof of God's existence, I thought, oh, there's really smart people who can really debate, you know, mathematics and philosophy on these really high levels, probably have the answers to everything, and I'm not smart enough to really understand that. And I kind of just left it at that. And then when I went through crises, I prayed to my, uncle in the sky, and he always cheered me on. And whatever happened, I thought that was meant what to happen. But then I had this experience, and I had, it was really a true religious experience. Actually, I'd had a few before, but they were sort of minor. But I had a bigger quasi, I don't want to overstate it. It was sort of this right temple lobe experience where I felt like God was in the room with me. Not crazy lady experience, but just sort of what people talk about at church a lot, like kind of a feeling of overwhelming love come over me. And I had this sense really deep in my heart that everything was going to turn out all right. I was going through this breakup at the time. And I became very curious about that experience. Like, how could I explain that experience to myself? And as I looked farther and farther and read more and more, I discovered science, for one thing, and I discovered human psychology. And it started to make sense that we would evolve with this idea that in a crisis, we would have a little right temporal lobe, explosion, kind of almost like a mini seizure that would give us this feeling of overwhelming love. Now, does that mean that there's something wrong with that? No. That's fantastic. It doesn't mean that God gave it to me. It doesn't mean that proceeding with a feeling of confidence and love in the world isn't a good idea. That's a really good idea. But it doesn't mean that there's a God. Okay, this was the next part of it that was really amazing to me. At first I thought that a world without God was really sad. And the truth is, it is really sad. It's a harsh world when you think that we evolved. And by the way, evolution is a horrifying process. It's so funny to me that anyone would think that God would invent evolution because it's so filled with death and pain and creative destruction in the most horrible ways. So I think that's the world we live in. But does that make us any less special? No. To me, the idea that we are this species who has evolved to have consciousness and to have the scientific method so that we can exchange information with each other and to understand that we're going to die, which to me, 33% of everyone who believes is just trying to pretend they're not going to die. If we really accept that we're really going to die, everyone in this room is just a little wildflower that has popped up in some moment and is eventually going to go away. That makes life so precious. That makes this moment so precious. Every moment that we're mindful and alive and aware and conscious is so much more important when you don't think that there's an afterlife or even some God who's looking after you. And to me, that is the gift of not believing in God. And when I hear these statistics up here, like 16% of people don't believe in God or are not affiliated with a religious organization in the United States, I am so happy about that because I'm so lucky that I don't have to be part of a religion. As a woman and as a human, in most parts of the world and in most parts of history, you had to be part of the in-group, and the in-group was the Westboro Baptist Church or whatever it is. Like, the way you survived was to be part of this group. And I'm lucky enough that I live in a big society that is open-minded enough that I am not forced, because of just insuring myself against the things that could happen in life, to have to be part of a religion. I don't have to be. And I feel so happy about that. Okay, I have 7 minutes left, great. Okay, so I told them that my topic was, which I haven't even gotten to my topic. I told them that my topic was gonna be, should I force my daughter to go to church? Okay. I find religion really fascinating. To me, it's about creating groups of people and creating rituals and identifiers and doing certain things that makes you able to identify other members of your group. And I have that in other ways, by the way. I'm part of the Groundlings improvisational group in LA, and I know who those people are, and we know each other, and we have certain little rituals we do. I mean, like, that's very comforting to me. I'm in a family. We have our own rituals. I think we're just all group creators. We're huge group creators. One of those groups is churches, and they're very effective. They're very effective at organizing people, and they're very effective as a force for good. Although on balance, I think they can be more of a force for not good. But they can be a force for good. But they are a huge phenomenon in our society, and I want my daughter to be, well, there's two things. One is, I want her to be really smart about people because we are wired for culture. We came into the world and we're wired to understand other people's psychologies, and one big influence on human psychology is religion, and I want her to have that information. Two, I sort of want to inoculate her against becoming religious later in her life. I'm so nervous about her being raised as an atheist that I don't want her to go through some crisis in her life and then suddenly become religious. So to me, I would like to expose her to just enough religion so that she understands how it works psychologically. Because I know a lot of people who are raised by non-religious people who don't really understand religion, and then later in life they suddenly become religious, and my feeling is that they don't see the psychology behind it. Anyway, so I would like to give that to my daughter. One church I went to, so I did this big church project, January to June. I was going to do it all year, and then I just gave it up, but I might take it up again, where I was going to a different church every week. And just sitting there, I'm interested in my community, and I'm interested in the people. And it was mostly great. It was mostly great, group meetings. But one church I went to was the Unitarian Universalists. And, you can really be an atheist. In fact, their whole liturgy is all about, here we are, trees and grass, it's going away. It's totally everything I believe. It was fantastic. I was really on the verge of tears for almost the entire service in Evanston, and then I went in Spokane, where I'm from, and it was fantastic there. Really smart, really great, good group of people doing good community service work. And I kept thinking, oh my God, I've totally found my church. I don't have to pretend. Most of the time when I go to church, I think I would still be part of this group, but there's this, and I think Jesus is a metaphor, and I think the death is a metaphor, and I'm doing all this stuff. But at the Unitarian Universalist Church, I was there's nothing I disagree with. The problem is I'm a misanthrope and not a joiner. My biggest problem is I really don't like people that much. I don't want to join another group, and I don't want to have another thing I have to go to, and also I'm already in a family. To me, what I need more of is time alone, not another big group of people to get to know. So I didn't join, and now my daughter, who's about to turn 13 in a couple of weeks, they have this great thing at the Unitarian Universalist Church. It's like the OWL program, but they teach you about all different religions, and I can't decide whether I should force her to join this group. And I think it's probably too late because she already has a negative attitude towards religion, which of course I've cultivated because every day I point things out in the paper. Can you believe these crazy people? So I do try to say, and this lovely person. Mostly I tell her about the bad stuff because that's what I think. But I think I'm going to not force her to go to church because, one, I feel like she'll always have me, I hope, to be there to give her my opinion. And two, she really can discover it on her own if she wants to. And three, I really hope, I almost said pray, I really hope that our society here in the United States, where I expect her to live for the rest of her life, or in our modern world, our modern secular, creative, artistic, idea-filled world is the world she'll live in, and she won't have to go and show her fealty to some organization that has crazy beliefs and crazy rituals because she's worried about the future. That is what I hope for her. And so I guess my answer is no. I'm not going to force my daughter to go to church. Thank you.